Yay! Okay, I think it's now working. Hello and welcome. Good afternoon. This is AM Language, and this lesson is going to be for pre-intermediates. I am just going to share the video live on YouTube. AM Language, AM Language Studio. Well, it should just be AM Language, AM Language, and video and share. Excellent. Okay. So everyone, welcome to this afternoon's lesson. This is for pre-intermediate students. But if you are of a slightly different level, you are welcome to join and participate. In yesterday's video for pre-intermediates, what we were doing, we were looking at phone calls, making phone calls. Now, I recall that before I move on to today's lesson, before moving on to today's lesson with phone for help, I just want to quickly go over some things that we looked at yesterday. Hello, Rosa. Good afternoon. Hello. Thank you very much for joining. Just wanted to finish off just with going through the way the conversation would normally work when leaving a message, and then we'll move on to today's lesson. We'll just wait a little bit for more people to join before we start the lesson. There's usually the first 5 minutes of the lesson, people slowly join us, and then within 5 minutes, we have a normal size class whereby it's then okay to start. But while we wait, what I would like to remind you guys from yesterday is that when you are talking to someone on the phone, obviously there was a bit of language which I wanted to go over, which is how you leave a message. Okay, now we've got Halio. Hello, Halio. Good afternoon as well. So let me explain in terms of how to leave a message. I just wanted to go over how you leave a message when it comes to spelling something. Such as your name, your email address, letters. And for this, we need to just look at the pronunciation of some letters as well. I'm just going to bring something up on my screen. Right, here we go. Okay. I will leave this in the description below, but this is something that is useful to know. How do you spell when leaving a message? So this is when it comes to leaving the spelling of your name. This is when it comes to leaving the spelling of an email address and phone numbers. So let's have a little look at this. The first thing that I would like you guys to do, I'm going to send it to you guys in the AM Live chat. Feel free to click on the link, and this link can show you what I am looking at. The important thing is the pronunciation of the letter and spelling. So let's say you want to leave your name. Okay, the first thing that you need to make sure is always go with your first name. Don't go with your second name. Go with your first name. So if your name, for instance, is James Brown, for example, and I'm not just talking about the singer, James Brown, your name, you go with James and then Brown. And you introduce your name by saying, okay, my first name is James, and my second name is Brown. Now, sometimes you might be saying a name that people don't know too well, and therefore the spelling can be a bit confusing. So this is when you can use the phonetic alphabet. Now, the phonetic alphabet, which I have just in the live chat section over here, is the type of language you can use to help people on the other end of the phone to understand what letters you are spelling. So let's say I wanted to spell the name James. I would look at the phonetic alphabet, for example, and I would say J for Juliet. So I would say James, and then I would go through the spelling of James by James for Juliet, for example. So J for Juliet, A for Alpha, M for, what does it say here? M for Mike, E for Echo, S for Syria. Now, the pronunciation of some of these the letters as well. Let's just go through the alphabet pronunciation. You've got A. We go for the long sound, not the short sound. So we don't go for a, b, k. We go for the long sound of the letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This next one, some people might say H, which gives out an sound. If you do that, people still understand what you are saying. Me, personally, I say H. I combined A, the sound of A, with a ch to get the sound H. So I go with H. So H. I, J, K, L, M. So for M and N, M and N, you've got EM, which equals M. You've got EN, which equals N. O, P, Q, R. So notice instead of R, I know I can't roll the tongue, but instead of R or R, I go R. R. Okay, so AR making an R sound, as in car, equals R. Okay, so R. R for Romeo. S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. So what I would like you guys to do is, can you try and spell your name using this example? So for instance, I would write R for Romeo. I would write I for India. I'll do this in one go. I for India. C for Charlie. H. I need to remind myself. H. Oh yes, H for hotel. H for hotel. A for Alpha. R for Romeo. And D for Delta. Now, it's a good idea to learn how to spell your name like this over the phone. So when you are leaving your name, you know how to leave your name. So my first name is Richard, R for Romeo, I for India, C for Charlie, H for hotel, A for Alpha, R for Romeo, D for Delta. Okay. this helps people understand when you are giving your name, your email address, and your mailing address as well. So it's important that you learn this in terms of your own name, your email address, and your normal address. This will help people understand you. So even if you get the pronunciation of your of the letter of your name wrong, because sometimes there's a confusion between your first language and English, if you still give the example, it means people will understand you. So this is something that you do need to learn how to do when leaving a message. Learn how to spell your name, your email address, and your normal address over the phone. It's a really important thing to learn how to do. And if you scroll up, you can see the link that I have included in the live chat session that can help you develop this skill. Once for your homework, one of the things I would encourage you to do is record yourself in your phone practicing leaving your name, your email address, and your number or your home address, and then play it back or send it to a friend. See if someone can understand what you are saying. It's a very important technique and it's useful to know. Okay, so uh, if at any point you want to leave me your name, uh, if you, for instance, Rosa, if you like to leave me, for instance, the spelling of your name, like R for Romeo, for example, or Hario, if you'd like to leave me the spelling of your first name, Hario, like J for Juliet, please feel free to do. Let's see what you come out with. Okay, so with that, we can move on to the next stage of our lesson. By the way, please like and share the video as well. So, in today's lesson, what we will be doing is we will be looking at the subject of to phone for help. In this lesson, we will look at how you can phone for help. We'll look at forming negatives as well in terms of our ability to understand vocabulary. So here we're going to look at something called a prefix, something that it's a bit of language, a few words that you put on the start at the beginning of a word that changes its meaning to a negative. And we will discuss the various reasons and whys and situations whereby you might need to call for help. And then if there is still time, I don't think there will be, we can move on to what a nightmare, but I don't think we will have time. So we're just going to have a little look. Briefly, let me explain that if you do have this book, the pre-intermediate book, we are on page 102, page 102, phone for help, unit 12, okay? And on page 109, there is a very large photo of a spider and with a title saying it's an emergency. And you've got some reading here, a police force, a doctor, and a chef. And these are just personal stories about people saving either another person or themselves when they are in danger. I have been told actually in English anyway. I don't know if it's the same in your language, but please leave it in the live chat section. Let me know if it's the case. A lot of advice, for instance, in the United Kingdom, is that if you need help and you are in the street, apparently the word you shout is not help, but apparently you shout fire. This is because they found that when people shout for help, people get scared and run. But if people hear the word fire, for some reason they don't run, they want to go and look at the fire. So they're more likely to come and help. A bit of psychology there. Good afternoon, Matila. Thank you very much for joining, and hello, good afternoon to you too. Okay, so phoning for help. Let's think of some situations. If you like, please leave your ideas in the live chat session about situations you would need to phone for help. Now, I can think of one possible situation, and I'm going to start off, and then I'm going to ask you guys to add to the ideas. So I will start off with my idea about a situation you might call for help, and I would like you guys to write in the live chat your ideas when you might call for help. So my first idea would be calling if there is a fire in your home. For example, you might call the help line, the fire brigade, and you would ask them to come and help and put out the fire. So that would be my suggestion. What about yours? When would you phone for help? What other situations might you call for help? Let me know in the live chat section. I would like just to see what language you use, um, and what situations you try to explain. At this point, I just want to see if you can give examples. Arena, good afternoon. For help, we can call when it smells of gas. Okay, so when a place smells of gas, yes, Arena, I think that is definitely a good example when you need to call for help. I'm a little bit scared actually of cooking with gas. I think it's better, it's easier to cook with gas, but I'm a little bit scared of gas, which is why I prefer to cook with an electric stove instead of a gas stove. I think in my mind an electric stove is safer than a gas stove. Um, and I think it's the same with heating as well. I prefer electric heating or natural fire heating instead of gas heating. But that is just me. So we've got Irina. Thank you very much. That's a really good example. Can we have anyone else give another idea for the type of reasons, a situation when you might call for help? I don't know, but if any of you have been to Australia or South Africa, you might end up calling for help if you have a problem with certain animals, such as in Australia, you might have a problem with spiders, for example, or snakes. That's also the case in South Africa, for example, some parts of the United States as well. Okay, so okay, feel free to add any more live in the live chat, any more ideas. But now let's go on and we'll look at some important new important vocabulary or sentences you need to know when calling for help. So you might call, and first of all, certain questions you might need to ask. Oh, Sandra, hello, good afternoon. If someone has breathing problems, yes, definitely. At the moment, definitely. Irina, you've come up with another one. Worth call. Oh, worth calling. Well done. Worth calling. Worth calling for help when water gushes out of the pipe. Irina, I am impressed. I am impressed. What a really good sentence. For those of you who don't know, worth calling for help, meaning it's a good idea to call for help when water gushes out of the pipe. This means there is a burst pipe and you've got a leak and water is flooding your place. So that's a really good example. Hario, when someone is walking around your house and you don't know who it is. Yes, that's a very, very good example, Hario. I don't know if any of you have ever watched, but I watched a YouTube video maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and the YouTube video was of video people's video cameras on the outside of their house in the United States. And these videos caught people, very strange people, walking around their house late at night, sometimes with a weapon, sometimes with a mask or looking scary. It, it's uncomfortable to watch. It certainly makes you think, what would your camera catch if you had a camera outside your door? So Hario, that's a good example as well. Well done, guys. Okay, so the most important things is, first of all, what's the emergency number? That's obviously a question you would need to ask. If you buy a SIM card for your mobile phone in Malta, it should have the emergency number automatically on the SIM card. And I think that's the same with most countries that I have been to, and it's good. I think most SIM cards I have had automatically come with the emergency number of that country, so that's good. Um, Now, if then we have this one. Actually, we've got how many people are misusing the number. Just in case you guys don't know, misusing. If someone is misusing the number, it means they are not using the number seriously. So, for instance, if you have ever worked in for law enforcement, and you will see a lot of people misusing the number. This means people call um, for unimportant reasons. Hario, the most common is 911. That certainly is the case in the Americas. 911 is the most common number in the Americas. In the UK, for example, it's 999. I can't remember what the number is for when I was in Australia or New Zealand. I can't remember what the number it was there. Right, so let's have a little look at questions. Okay, so first of all, you would need to go through and you would need to say, for instance, now this is not in this book exactly. I'm going to look at the language in the book in just a moment, but I just want to go through the conversation. The important aspects of the conversation, it simply is making sure you can give the following information. One, your name and maybe number or ID number, for example. Two, always important, your location. And three, uh, to be able to describe the situation, to be able to describe the situation. So those are the three most important things you do need to know how to do. You need to know how to give your name, spell your name, like we did at the start of the lesson, and obviously give your number or ID number. Obviously, to give your location, and then to be able to explain the situation or to describe the situation. And that can be challenging, that can be difficult. You will remember last week we looked at the passive, for example. That's when the passive does become important, potentially, and past perfect. You would need to know how to use that language. So let's look at some uh, let's look at some important language here. Um, I think one of the things we can look for is, again, the structure of how to describe the situation. The way we can think about is this. What's the problem? Um, what happened? What's the problem and what happened? Those, and we can probably leave it simply as that. So what's the problem? For instance, the problem is, let's say at the moment, what's the problem? My housemate, she is not breathing very well. Okay, what happened? Um, she got sick. She got the flu. Okay, right. There we go. So that's nice, straight and forward. Another example, let's say you need to call the police. What's the problem? There's there are, let's go with an accident. Okay, so what's the problem? We have been in a car crash, and my friend is badly injured. What happened? When you end up telling the police, we were in a car crash, someone hit us and drove off, for example. So those are the important things you guys need to know how to do. What's the problem? What happened? That's those are the two things you need to know how to do when describing a situation. Um, so your name, number or ID number, your location, and to be able to describe the situation, what the situation is in the present, and how the situation happened. Now, how the situation happened might or might not be important to explain over the phone. That might be more important later when you try to tell maybe the paramedics or the police when they arrive. Okay, so at this point, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. If not, we are going to move on to the next bit. And the next bit, we will look at the content of the book. Okay, so let's have a little look. In this, we are presented with a story. We are presented with a story in excess to do with it's an emergency, and a police force has it's to do with three separate stories. So what we'll do is we'll just have a little look at the type of language that is being used, so it gives us a bit more of a context. So what I'll try and do is I'll try and summarize each of these stories for you. And if you want to try and read the stories or read the stories later, by all means. What I'll also do is I'll explain some of the language that's in here. So in the first section, we have a police force. Okay, so it's an emergency, and this is on page 109. We have a police force has launched a campaign against misuse of the emergency phone number. Now, when you talk about a campaign, this is where you send out a lot of adverts. So if you launch a campaign, what you're doing is you're spending a lot of money on adverts to send out a message. So a campaign is to produce and send a lot of adverts to send out a message. So at the moment, across the world, there are lots of medical campaigns about staying at home, save yourself, protect your friends, your family. So a police force has launched a campaign against misuse of the emergency phone number. Every day, the police in northern England have to answer 399 calls, but a third of them are totally unnecessary. So an important number of phone calls are not important. Last year, the calls that the police received included someone wanting a ride home, a man complaining about his TV not working, and two people who reported lost cats. A number were also from young children who accidentally dialed 999. The police are sending leaflets, so little adverts again, paper adverts, to houses to explain the problem and have introduced an £80 fines for those making inappropriate calls. So important words here. You've got reported. This ties in with talking about what happened. So we can, in fact, this is the media. You report, the media report. Report to is simply to tell someone what happened. Okay, that is to report a story or report news, what to tell someone what happened. Okay, news story. Okay. And then a fine, just to explain, if you get fined, for example, an $80 fine, okay, it simply means this is a penalty, financial penalty. So it's supposed to try and stop people from doing something. So at the moment, in the UK, I think they are talking about introducing a fine for being outside when they don't need to be outside. I think they're talking about a £100 fine if you are outside when you should not be outside. We then the next story, it then talks about a doctor. I'll just summarize this. A doctor in Australia who saved a young boy's life. What happened was is that this boy, he's 13 and he's cycling along, and to begin with, everything seemed to be fine, but he fell and he hit his head. And at first, his mother thinks that it's fine, but it turns out it's not fine. It's not good at all. Now, this time I'm using fine as in okay. But after the boy hit his head, the boy ends up with what we call swelling. Ends up with swelling. So this is when you hurt a part of your body and it begins to grow and it's red. That's a swelling. So it's a kind of injury. And then obviously the police come. The ambulance comes. No, his mum. His mum rushed him to hospital. So to rush someone to hospital means to take them quickly to hospital, for example. You then have a chef who saved his own life. What happened was is that he was bitten by by a spider, and this time he was bitten on his hand. His hand swelled up, so his hand got bigger. He collapsed. Now, if you collapse, it means you fall over, and you might not be conscious as well. And then he was rushed to hospital as well. So those are just 3 stories. There are more stories, but we don't have time to go through every single one. So let's have a little look now at the next section. So we have this idea of some stories that's happening to do with people calling in an emergency. So now let's build our language. So here we need to look on page 108, and we're going to look at 5 and 6, how to form negatives using something called a prefix. Now, a prefix are letters that come at the start of the word that can change the word and can make it negative. Now, prefixes could be something like you have an in, you might have an ill, you could have an im, or you could even have an ir. And there are many, many prefixes in English. This goes on and on and on and on, really. But there tends to be a certain repetition. Once you know the meaning of a prefix, it doesn't matter what the word is. You'll have an understanding of what the word means because you know what the prefix means as well. Okay, so let's have a little look. So the task over here is we often form negatives of adjectives and adverbs by adding a prefix. The most common prefix is un, but you will also see in, ill, im, and ir. So I should probably put un in there as well. Okay. So the idea is that we're going to look at some of the questions in 5, some of the words in 5, and we are going to either remove or add the prefix to see how the word changes. Okay. So for this one, let's start off by looking at it together. Just want to make sure I'm on the right page for this one. Here we go. So, for example, we have number 1. We can say a wise decision, meaning it's a good decision. But the opposite would be unwise. So we could say, on one hand, it was a wise decision. On the other hand, we can say the opposite. It was an unwise decision. So, for example, a wise decision at the moment would be to stay indoors and keep yourself safe and friends and family. If you go outside and you are in a big crowd, for example, this would be an unwise decision. This would be an unwise decision. Next, you have something that's illegal or legal. So 2, you have it's illegal. And the opposite is it's legal. So here you're looking at something that in terms of law, you either cannot or can do. Illegal, you cannot do. Legal, you can do. We'll go into some examples in a moment. Next one, a fortunate result. A fortunate result. Fortunate result is a lucky result. So number 3, fortunate result, meaning a lucky result. The opposite is unfortunate, meaning unlucky. Okay, unlucky. Next one, we've got very important. Number 4, very important. Sorry, I misread that. Not important. Very impolite. Very impolite. And the opposite would be very polite. So with now looking at the first 4, let's see if you guys can give me some examples. So I'd like you guys to give me examples here. Can you think of any wise or Unwise decisions. Can you think of anything that is legal or illegal in your country? Can you think of something that was a fortunate result? For instance, I would say a fortunate result could be a sporting result. Maybe I remember last year Manchester United played Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League, and Manchester United got a very fortunate result because they won. They were very lucky to win. You then have maybe a character that is either very impolite or polite. Um, if you look at let's think of certain films. Or TV series. I think in Money Heist, the professor over the phone who does the talking, he's an interesting character. I would say I get the impression he's polite rather than impolite. I think some of the other characters in Money Heist are impolite. If I think of certain, you could say, who is a good example of someone who's impolite? I can't think of any characters at the moment. It's a bit strange. My mind has gone blank. I can't think of impolite characters. Anyway, so those are some examples. Feel free to give me your own examples below. Let's continue. Okay, so you've got a happy marriage. I think you can guess what the next one would be. So on one hand, you have a happy marriage. And on the other hand, you can therefore have an unhappy marriage. A good example, let's see, if any of you have watched The Crown, I think most people in the royal family end up having an unhappy marriage. I think most people when I think of The Crown, I think most people in the royal family, it shows them having an unhappy marriage rather than a happy marriage. For instance, the Queen. I think the Queen has had, for some period of time, an unhappy marriage. It would, according to the TV series. Next one, totally expected. 6. Totally expected. And the opposite would be totally unexpected. So if we were to look at the coronavirus, for example, at the start of, let's say, the end of 2019, the idea that the world would be on lockdown, that would be totally unexpected. However, by the start of March, I think people would have said, "Oh, that was to be expected." So you can say, when talking about the past, you say that was to be expected. That was to be unexpected. You could say that is expected. That is unexpected. Yeah, my connection has gone. I hope I'm back. I'll continue writing. A practical solution, and the opposite would be I'm back. Good. So you have a practical solution and you have an unpractical. Sorry. Yes, you have an impractical solution. You have a practical solution and an impractical solution. Sandra, an interesting story, an uninteresting story. Yes, that is correct. Very good. That is a good example. Well done, Sandra. So, a practical solution. This at the moment is an interesting one. I watched a video to do with English people back in the 1950s in England talking about how to deal with the flu. And some people came out with a practical solution, such as take the medicine, stay in bed. That would be a practical solution. Some people had some very interesting ideas and some very impractical solutions. I don't know what it is, but in England, people do have this love for mustard. And some people really thought that if they put mustard on their chest and on their back, it would help them fight the flu. I have heard some people also said, sleep with a dirty old sock around their neck. Some people would put onions and garlic into their bed. Really strange. That's a very impractical solution to the flu, and this were some very funny ideas in the 1950s when people didn't know all that much, but they seemed to think that onions and mustard and garlic would, if they slept with mustard, onions, and garlic, it would somehow help them overcome the flu. Very, very strange. Then you have, for example, number 8. You have something that is fair, or something is that is unfair. Here we're talking about the idea of something that is either just or unjust. So a really good example, I would say, um, beads. Rosa has said beads. Is this to do with the flu? If it's to do with the flu, I would like to oh, from garlic. Oh, the beads from garlic. Okay, I see what you mean. There might be something in it. I'm not going to lie. I don't know all that much about the ideas of certain types of food that can stop. I have heard that if you eat a lot of garlic, that is good for you. Okay, so let's continue. We have that is fair or unfair. So something that is just or unjust. Irina says we eat onions and garlic when we get a flu. Here we would say the flu. The flu. Um, I would say eating it, yes. Eating onions, eating garlic, eating flu. Sorry, eating garlic, eating onions, eating mustard, these are good things for you, and I have heard that these are good things to eat as well. Like, for instance, onion soup apparently is very good for you. Um, I don't know about putting onions and garlic in your bed. It's not something I personally would do. I prefer drinking whiskey as my option. Um, so let's continue. Something that's fair or unfair. This is usually the common story to do with the anything, some kind of hero story, really. um, so for instance, if we look at a film called The Pursuit of Happiness, okay, The Pursuit of Happiness, we see Will Smith's character, and life seems to be very unfair for Will Smith's character. It's very difficult. He ends up homeless with a child. Things do not go his way, and life seems to be very unfair for Will Smith's character. But at the end, because he's clever, he works very hard, he is rewarded, and then we see a happier situation, and then we say, well, that is fair. That is fair. Um, so that's the idea of something being fair or unfair, for example. Next, a comfortable bed. Well, quite simply, let me know, like the video, And let me know in the comment section below if you have a comfortable bed. So number 9, we have a comfortable bed. And the opposite is uncomfortable. And that would be the opposite. That's the negative, uncomfortable. I'm lucky. I can say I have a comfortable bed. Let me know if you have a comfortable bed. Actually, one of the things is with a comfortable bed is it does make a really big difference to your sleep. Next one, common and uncommon. So number 10 here, we have a common name, and we have an uncommon name. So in the UK, Richard is. I don't think it's kind of common. It's not really common, but it's a fairly common name. An uncommon name in the UK. I'm going to go with someone I know. I have a friend named Amar. Now he's the only person I have ever met in my life whose name is Amar. So for me, Amar would be an uncommon name. Edward, Sandra, Edward. Edward is a common name in the UK. Yes. Ed is the short version for Edward. So yes, Edward is a common name in the UK. So is Harry, William. Those are common names. Next one. Let's move on. Let me know if your name is common or uncommon in your country. Then we move on to number 11. Okay, here we have a patient customer. And the opposite over here would be impatient. An impatient customer. Now, one of the things I would like to point out is the article. Hario says a common name in Colombia is Maria. Yes, I have met a few people from Colombia named Maria. How many? What's the most common name I know? Yes, I think, yeah, Maria is a very common name in Colombia. Maria, my name is common in all the world. Yeah, I think your name is common. My last name is uncommon in my country. Mantilla. Where are you from, Mantilla? Are you from Colombia as well? If you are from Colombia, I can tell you that I have met one other person with your last name over here, Mantilla. I've met one other person with your name, Mantilla. So, what was the last one? Patient customer and yes, an impatient customer. I just want to point something out to you. You'll notice that when the my last name is Luquena. I come from Colombia. Okay, right. So Luquenri, Luquerna. Okay, Luquena. Yes, that is an uncommon name. I have not met anyone else with that last name. Irina, Maria, very international name. Ukrainian girls often have this name too. Okay, very good. So we know Maria. Maria in English is Mary, and it is a common name. Sandra, my name is uncommon. Your first name, your last name, or maybe both. So I just want to point something out. Okay, you will notice that with these prefixes, we have it always starts with a vowel. So remember, with the prefix here, you've got an plus your word beginning with either it's un, in, il, im, or IR. So don't forget the an. Mantilla es mi segundo apellido y es común. Okay, I did not understand that. Mantilla is my second last name and it is common. Okay, very good. Okay, now I understand. So let's continue. We've got patient and impatient customer. Let's move on. 12, an inconvenient time. An inconvenient you have an inconvenient time, and the opposite would be convenient time. Simply put, if you're arranging a meeting, you could say I would be happy to arrange a meeting at a time that is convenient to you. I would be happy to arrange a meeting at a time that is convenient to you, meaning good for you. Inconvenient is bad. So you can say, unfortunately, the time you suggested is inconvenient. Convenient. Can I suggest XYZ, whatever the other time is? So this language is important to know how to use. Completely possible, and then you've got completely impossible. This is like mission impossible. Possible, it is completely possible. Is that what it says? Yes, it's completely possible, meaning it's very realistic. Realistic. And to say it is completely impossible simply means it's not realistic. Then you have a natural product. So you can have a natural product and you can have an unnatural product. This is quite important, I suppose, when it comes to products like creams and stuff like that. I misspelled products. This is important when it comes to certain types of, creams, maybe makeup if you use makeup, and actually maybe even food as well. You want your products to be natural. You don't want unnatural products in your food. Then you have something that is, you have an irrational fear, and then the opposite would be rational. I think this word doesn't change too much from Latin-based to Latin-based languages, but if it is irrational, it means that it's a fear that you haven't thought about. Irrational, something you have not thought about properly. Okay, so that's what we mean by something being irrational. So if you are irrational to cucumbers, if you are scared, if you have a fear of cucumbers, that will be an irrational fear because there's no reason to be scared of cucumbers. If you are scared of nuts, well, that might be rational because if you're allergic to nuts, then that's a problem. So it depends on on the fear. And finally, a very pleasant, person slash a very unpleasant person. A pleasant person is a nice person. An unpleasant person is not a nice person. And that's all there is really for that one. For example, these pills were made with natural products. Yes, Hardio, that is an excellent example of how to use natural in that positive way. So really well done. So guys, unfortunately, we've run out of time because the next stage should be building this up to see how we can use this in different contexts. So I think for the start of the next lesson, with the pre-intermediate class, we'll just go over this language and we'll try to start putting things together. I'll also start to use this language in some of the other lessons. I will be giving a writing lesson as well, and we can have the opportunity to use some of this language just to remind all of you about the timetable. So tomorrow is Wednesday. So at 10 a.m. we have intermediate. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon we have up intermediate and IELTS. 4 o'clock we have pronunciation lesson for all levels. Then Thursday we have beginner and elementary at 10 a.m. And then at 2 o'clock is our next pre-intermediate class. So our next pre-intermediate class is going to be at 2 o'clock on Thursday. And then we have intermediate at 4 o'clock on Thursday. So guys, thank you so much for joining. Please feel free to leave questions and answers in the comment section below after the video has finished. Thank you so much for joining. Please like and share the video, and I hope all of you are remaining well. A shout out to all of you who participated in the lesson today in the live chat section. So thank you to Rosa, Hario, Joanna, Sandra, Irina, and anyone else Maria, and anyone else that I might not have mentioned. So thank you to all of you for joining. Have a lovely evening, and thank you very much. So thank you for participating. Like and share the video, and see you, some of you, tomorrow. Have a really good evening, and bye for now.